4:05 is start time. And city colleagues, if you could help us do roll call.
I'll go ahead and do the call. Alrighty. Mr. Lindblade.
Present.
Ms. Norris Weeks.
Here.
Ms. Pelican.
Here.
Mr. Perkins. Mr. Prisley.
Present.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
And Chair Bach.
Here.
We have a quorum today.
Okay. So the first order of business on our agenda, which I think you all have, and if you don't, there are some copies up close to the doorway, is we are going to approve the draft minutes from our August 15, 2024, our first meeting.
I believe that, Bernadette, were you on the phone?
No, I called to let someone know that my flight was delayed.
You're on
I'll move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve.
Second.
And we have a second. So I'm now going to open it to discussion. I do have some very minor changes. They're just kind of typos. And I apologize, I was normally send them in advance. But they're so minor, I'll just state them here. So I guess at the top, where we have the address, we just have a typo where we have 528 Northwest 2nd Street.
Yeah.
So we do have the correct address on there, 101 Northeast 3rd Avenue. The other thing I just noticed was on the second page, when we have in the second paragraph, the motion by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Walters, and then we should be naming Mr. Perkins, not Miss, to serve as committee vice chair. Under section 4, just the first sentence, if we could remove, there was a proposed timeline for the committee, city commission, and recruitment form. If we could remove the citizens advisory board, because I think it's repetitive with committee. So, and we just refer to ourselves as committee throughout the document otherwise. Minor addition, but just right before for the good of the order, area 6, when we're talking in the second paragraph above about discussing the ideas for gathering public input. The last sentence says acting assistant city manager provided additional input. If we could just put Miss Reese, comma, acting assistant, just so that we know.
Which one?
So
you know which one?
We know who was here. She was the one, and like we name everyone else. So, and those are the only corrections that I proposed.
So, Madam Chair, I continue with my motion with Scrivener errors.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. So, all in favor? We'll just do it by show of hands and saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so our fourth order of business is presentation by Susan Grant, who's here with us today, our acting city manager. And I know you have a backup information, which is the current City of Fort Lauderdale org chart. So Susan, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and not just talking about the org chart and how I've kind of set it up, but just talking about the role of as city manager. And all of you at the table are involved in the city in various ways. So I think you're very, more familiar than maybe average citizen. From them, they might see the city manager as someone who goes to ribbon cuttings and is sitting at the meetings. But like I said, I think you all are familiar with the role and what it is. It's a CEO of a pretty large company, right? We have 2,500 full-time employees. And lots of part-timers as well. Summertime we expand when we have summer rec and different programs that we do over the summer. So the city manager, manages 12 operating departments. Currently I have 4 ACMs. Previously it was just Anthony and I working for Greg, and the workload is tremendous here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. So we expanded that initially to have 3. And then the more and more that we dove into House Bill 1365 as it relates to homelessness, we added a fourth, Chris Cooper, who is, in addition to overseeing DSD as he did before, is the point person on the different homeless initiatives. And if you tune into the commission conference meeting next Tuesday, we'll be doing a pretty thorough presentation about what the city's plans are as it relates to 1365, both in the short term and the longer term. So just some things to share about the role. You can't be, there's so many areas. We have police, we have fire, we have development services, finance, HR, an airport, parks. So you can't be an expert in all areas, yet you really have to kind of have a good feel for each and how operations work in each. But I think that's where hiring and recruitment become so important. I always say when I sit on an evaluation committee for a new hire, it's the most important thing that we do. Because again, the city manager can't be an expert in all of those areas. So you have to hire folks who are and know how to manage, that will give the city manager good advice so they can pass that on to the elected officials who we serve. Because that's one of the key things, is presenting well-researched professional advice to the commission so they can make those decisions. So, in addition to overseeing all the employees, through those department heads, the city manager is the final arbiter on discipline, and not all discipline, not every, small suspension or letter of reprimand, but larger suspensions and terminations. Those are one of the things that city managers have to make decisions on. Some other things, good communication skills, and I think that, is, you take that for granted, but not just internally, but externally. And we have good people, Ashley and her staff, that help us with the external piece and the internal piece as well. One of the other things I think might be key that you might want to look at is negotiation skills. And that comes into a couple different things. When we're negotiating agreements for a P3 or a different contract, to be able to kind of not just have the financial piece of it, but also the operations piece. And I think whoever is hired, experience with union negotiations, I think is a critical skill. We talk about 80% of our budget being tied to personnel. So understanding those union contracts, not just how they work operationally, but the financial impact of that is really important when you're making those decisions. Let's see here. Just ability to focus on the big picture while also having attention to detail. You kind of have to be both, and also being process focused. I always thought that, when something goes wrong, we don't focus on the person. We focus on, hey, what went wrong in the process and how can we fix that going forward? I just think that those would be important things. So when you look at the org chart, you can see how we're, split up. And, in addition to, overseeing those 4 assistant city managers, we have an office staff in the city manager's office. We have the chief education officer. We're about to, through the budget, add the chief waterway officer. We have public affairs, the folks, and economic development, the folks that take care of our interests in Tallahassee and in Washington, and then Stratcom also is part of that office. So like I said, you can see how we're organized. I think we're happy the way it's set up now. Again, whoever is hired as city manager will be able to set that up however they want. And from my perspective, I'm just here to help you. I would love for us to have the best city manager possible, and whatever I can do to make sure or help in that process, I'm excited to do so. So just that's what I have, and just if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Susan.
I have just a couple.
Uh-huh.
And as we move forward, and with the intrusion, I have to call it intrusion because I don't like it, of AI. That's gonna play a big part. I think it should play a big part in either who we have on staff now that handles AI situation or it being a part of the requirements of the city manager.
That the city manager is, so we're in the process of developing an AI policy, just as it relates to our employees and their use of it. And so you're saying you would like, I mean, if you'd like something to be in the requirements, you can certainly pass that on to, Jerome, because we're gonna be providing, a draft to the commission and they will be the final. But you'd like someone who is
Either on staff or the city manager, him or herself.
is an expert at AI or familiar with AI or
They certainly would need to be familiar because I think moving forward, it's gonna determine who worked from home and who not worked from home, who's gonna be replaced and who's not gonna be replaced. And that's gonna be a big part of the city manager's responsibility. Okay? Those are mine.
okay.
Yeah,
So
and
right now-
we can emphasize that, Roosevelt, when we're looking at the brochure and the ideal candidate qualifications. Definitely. So yeah, I think
Or-
both Dan and Bernadette have comments.
Or interview questions,
Or
when
interview
y'all
questions.
put together your interview questions when you're
Interview,
doing your screening, to make sure you have a technology piece in there.
So I'll go Bernadette and then Dan.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment, I was looking at the org chart and I see that right now, there is a person who is over information technology, your assistant city manager, Anthony
Fajardo.
Anthony's
Okay,
here.
okay, so
There he is.
So I'm sure Anthony has some ideas on that already, right?
I do have some thoughts. I mean, I think AI is one of those things because it's so new and the technology is evolving so fast that it's kind of scary because there isn't a lot of information on how to really manage it and what its true power really is. So I think to Susan's point and to probably some of the comments that I'm hearing is that it's really important that as we move forward, whoever is sitting there understands that that's something that we really have to keep tabs on and it's something that is going to be impacting a lot of different aspects of not only the city but our society and our our culture. So there's a lot of fear of people losing their jobs to AI and robotics and whatever. And of course, as technologies evolve, you look at the streamlining of the auto industry just with Henry Ford when he created the assembly line. It changed things dramatically and it's so long. It feels like it's so long ago. But that was a sea change in how things operate. So yeah. Someone's actually going to have to take great care to ensure that whatever those impacts are, they're in a positive way and not in a negative way.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking at the org chart and I'm thinking of different city managers I've either worked with or I interact with, across the county and across the state. And you will find every city manager will have come up from one of these disciplines, right? They've been, development services. They've been a police chief. I've seen in Coral Springs, the former fire chief is the city manager now. So people have come up through all these different disciplines. And I don't know that there's one that's better or worse, but I think you'll probably see candidates. And I'm thinking, I remember in the brochure, that we want someone with X number of years of government experience. So they've started in one of these boxes, right? And then I'm assuming has moved up to, the assistant city manager or deputy city manager level and then moved up to that. But you will find really great city managers that have come through multiple boxes. In my case, I've hit a couple of the boxes in that I started my career in finance, spent 18 years in HR, then moved back into finance. So again, just, something to keep in mind when you're looking at candidates. I think they're good folks that have come up from just about each and every one of those disciplines.
Okay, no, that's good to know. So Dan, you had a
Yes. couple things. Thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome.
And out of these main boxes that we're looking at right here, are there any outside of the H2O officer? Are there any open positions?
In these boxes, no.
Okay.
No, yeah, the chief waterway is brand new. Chief education officer, we hired someone about 2 months ago. She's doing a great job. A former high school principal and district administrator, so happy to have Susan Leon on our staff as well.
Sure.
Yeah, no, all the boxes are filled.
Second question is, how would you characterize the overall staff morale?
So, you know what, it's something that is, when I look at the org chart here, I think it's pretty good. You know, it's hard, we do staff, you know, we do surveys. I don't know, when's the last time we've done one of those employee surveys?
It's been a couple of years now.
It's been a couple of years, and that would be a good thing to do to get some baseline data. I think we probably need to add that to our work plan. You know, we try to communicate as much as we can. You know, we talk about the open door. Literally, when I moved into the manager's office, there was film on the door. I took the film down and moved my desk so everyone could see me as they walk by. And, you know, when you look at our staff, everyone's very present. Everyone is in the office every day. Except when, you know, they're on vacation, we let them do that. And, you know, and out in the field. So I think overall very good. I mean, if we have issues, we address them.
Yeah.
That's, you know, what we do.
Well, I mean, part of the reason I asked the question is that you've gone through what I consider to be a really difficult time, losing the building and then decentralizing people in all these pockets all over the place. How much has that loss of cohesion affected the team?
So,
because you came off COVID, then you had the flood.
no kidding. And you know, COVID taught us that COVID was the thing that helped us recover from the flood. That it showed we knew how to work remotely, which you know when COVID hit, there was a learning curve associated with that. So when the flood happened, we got our computers, started working from home. We're in a good place now. I mean, we're in this building. We're in all of the 21st floor, half of the 16th, all of the 14th, and this, right? So this is what the eighth floor was at City Hall, plus this serves as our HR training room. So everyone that was at City Hall is back together again, with the exception of, I think, utility billing, who we moved over to development services. And they're there now full-time. And I think it's actually a good, there's nexus there with the things the folks in utility billing do and what they do at DSD. They have a nice setup as one-stop shop. So I think that over the past couple months, us all moving here, and then there's some finance folks at 1 East Broward as well. But again, walking distance, right? I think we're in a good place now. So when we're here we have a 5-year lease, and we'll allow that time to, you know, figure out what next steps are for City Hall.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I know we're focused on this org chart. Is it appropriate for me to ask her any other questions at this time?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. That's
I
it.
wanna make sure that
I didn't want to just
the
focus
agenda
on
item
this,
just
but
says
yeah.
Org chart.
Oh, yeah, no, that was just the only support document that we thought of, Susan and I spoke to include. But yeah, we really wanted Susan here to talk about the position and any questions you have, since she's currently fulfilling.
So then with that opening, one of the challenges, I mean, I've been here 17 years as the chamber president. I've been through a lot of city managers in my mind, too many. So what kind of attributes do you think a city manager needs to have in order to deal with this city, both from an internal perspective, staffing, et cetera, leadership, but then with the commission?
Right. You know, and that's, and I've worked for a few city managers myself. And I look at the tenure of the folks here. I mean, and they used to say the tenure for a city manager was 5 to 7 years, and I think that went down to 5. And the things I'm reading right now, it's shrinking, right? The time frame that people expect their tenure. The ICMA Code of Ethics, I'm sure you're familiar with, or you've heard of the International City and County Managers Association, and the Code of Ethics, says that a city manager should make a commitment to at least 2 years. That you're violating the Code of Ethics if you resign within that first 2-year period. So they expect a minimum of a 2-year commitment. So what are the challenges as it relates to both? Sometimes I say running the organization is the easy part. Right? I mean, the operations, running the organization is really, we have great people heading our departments. They know what they're doing. Police and fire, report directly to me. I've seen that done differently, but, Greg has had it that way. All of ours have had it that way. But I've had, talked to city managers that said 75% of their time is spent working with the elected officials. And I think folks that are applying for the job know that. The folks, if you're looking for someone that's been a city manager before, they'll know that is, a big part of the job. So here, some of the, we have all our wonderful community organizations and all our wonderful boards and committees. You can't get to each and every one of them every time they meet. So, the city manager has to be able to manage their time, to make sure that they have that balance of getting to each and every one of those things, to talk to the community and hear what they're doing, but also be able to spend time with staff. So some of the things that we do that we've implemented over the past couple of years is the senior staff wasn't getting together as a group. Now we actually do that 2 times a month. So we have about a 45-minute all-hands meeting with all the department heads right before we do our agenda prep meetings, and we do that 2 times a month. In addition, we have something called FL Stat, and those are either quarterly.
Quarterly for CIP and grants.
And then quarterly for the others. So that's bi-monthly. The other thing we've added is pulling in another layer of the organization. So that is, it used to be just department heads and the ACMs and the city manager, and we've expanded that to be the second in commands as well. And bi-monthly we get together with that group. We do a little bit of networking, so they all get to, see each other and, kind of not a non-work setting, but just chatting and talking and interacting, because we think that helps communication. And then we'll do something that's timely as far as training goes. The next one we have going, Ashley and her group are going to be doing a media training. Jerome and Kristen and their group have done some just-in-time HR training. So we get, together, or we'll bring in a guest speaker to speak to them. So those are some of the things that I think are very, very important for a city manager to do. Again, to be collaborative, to be a good communicator, and just the ability to both focus on the big picture and attention to detail. Because sometimes the attention to detail is what gets you, right? When you miss something on an agenda item or whatever. So we have to kind of be big picture oriented, but also focused on some of that small stuff too. The one other thing and I don't know what y'all are going to recommend or the commission's going to recommend. So I think someone had mentioned, we want someone who's had experience in an organization of a similar size. And I don't know how you define similar size. From my perspective, I would think that it might be better to say, set a population number, 100,000 or whatever. But I think once you hit 100,000, it's similar size, from my perspective. And the other thing I think you need to just make sure we talk about, and I don't know if I saw that in there, that they've managed and if they're 100,000 or more, it's a full service city. And you know the difference between a full service city would be us or Coral Springs or Pembroke Pines versus a Weston. Nothing against Weston, but they contract out. They contract out with BSO, they contract out with the folks that manage, really everything. So you want to have someone who has that operational experience in what you call a full service city. They've done all that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. So I think we have more questions. I saw Earl,
Okay, go ahead.
and then Mary, and then Bernadette, and then Roosevelt.
So I wanted to give you a compliment on at least you had to step up, you put your footprint on this and put it together and stabilized it. So, whether I agree or disagree, I do appreciate you stabilizing it, organizing it. It's something that we can bank on, that the city's being run, she's got it under control, and we feel good about it. Whether you agree or disagree, and there may be some things I would disagree.
I know,
So
and
I do
it's
appreciate
interesting.
that.
Someone asked, "Well, you're acting, so you're really not making decisions," and I'm
No,
like,
you
"Oh
are.
hell no!"
What I call it is,
They're like, "You don't have to make decisions," and I'm like,
No.
"Oh yeah."
what I call it is being stabilizing, and I think you've stabilized it, so I give you that compliment. I do really appreciate that. So, but what's interesting is I'm in a dynamic or an interesting situation where I've worked for Gretzes and Lee Feldman, and there was a lot of changes that went from Gretzes to Lee Feldman. Lee Feldman put his footprint up. When he was here, you knew he was here, and you saw it on every sticker, on every vehicle, and every building that Lee Feldman was here. And right now I'm in a unique situation where I work for the city of Sunrise. So, we have 3 water and sewage treatment plants, and we have the city manager's engineer, the assistant city manager's engineer, and the other city manager is Emily. So we have a lot of dynamics. We just built a new city hall, and like I said, we manage 3 water and sewer treatment plants.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'm hoping is when we look, I think the city is going to go through a lot of infrastructure issues, a lot of things that are going to need some expertise. And that's the delicate balance of being somebody who's very PR, less technically knowledgeable, and also then dealing with 5 bosses on their backs constantly, which is almost impossible to please. And what I've seen in the past as I worked through them is even the city manager would give up on one of the bosses when he just couldn't seem to please them, and then the politics came in and they knew elections. So there's so many dynamics, and this is a hard place. Sunrise doesn't deal with half the issues that Fort Lauderdale has. Fort Lauderdale is a community, but it also is a resort community. Those are 2 separate and dynamic things. So I always struggle with, we build community, but we also maintain a resort. It's very different, unique, and has its own uniques rather than what the neighborhoods are. So I guess I'm very grateful to participate in this, and we'll rely on some of your expertise and some of the things you can help us with, questions, things like that.
Anytime you have a question, and I think it's very typical to when candidates throw their hat in the ring, they will contact whoever's sitting in the seat.
Oh, yeah.
And I will.
And previous.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to get either the lay of the land, to pick your brain, and like I said, my goal is for us to have the best city manager possible. And this is a great job. I mean, I think who wouldn't want this job? So, like I said, anyone who calls, I'm going to talk to them and, give them whatever information they need to either make their decision or, help them, present to the committee and then ultimately the commission.
The last thing I just wanted to say is I'm so glad we're doing this, because if you notice, the last 2 city managers were pretty much just point to somebody in the room. And this time we need somebody to come in and literally be that new person that is able to assess, review before it makes changes. The last 2 city managers, they didn't have a chance to have that honeymoon period. They were literally in it, running it, chasing their tails with all of the bosses. This is a new person that's going to come in, and they're going to look, assess, evaluate, adjust, whatever it takes. So I think this process is really great.
Good point.
So then, Mary,
Well, I hear what you're saying about that, but being somebody that hired lots of people, it's always good to have people sitting on the bench too. You never know. have somebody come in that can swing right away. Dan kind of touched on, or maybe like one of you touched on, the fact that the new city manager has to report to 5 people who all have not the same expertise in operating a city. Especially, maybe a new commissioner, there's a learning curve for them too. And everybody has different viewpoints. I have a clue what that's like because I had to report to the Seminole Tribal Council.
Okay.
So there were 12 of them. And they change every 2 years. So what's the best way, do you think, to ask a question to determine that a person can handle that? Because as you said, that's 70% of the job, which is really sad, but I believe it. And how would we know that somebody could manage 5 individuals whose expertise goes from here to I'm just starting? Is there? I mean, I think those are good questions.
And those are good questions. And I think one of the ways is to do maybe a situational question. So say, what do you do when you have an elected official who, you're meeting with them one-on-one and they might be making disparaging comments against another elected official? How do you handle that? Ask them that. What do you do when you have an individual, a commissioner on a one-on-one meeting pitches an idea to you? What do you say? That's a great idea. Let's bring it to a conference meeting and see if we have, support from, because that's the biggest thing. The manager's job is to implement, the policy that the commission provides to you, but as a collective body, and to make sure. I mean, we deal with, hey, there's a little flood on this corner, or hey, we have this, or hey, we have that. I mean, that's our job through our operating departments to do that. But for policy stuff, I mean, we need to get that collective direction from the commission, and that's what. So ask questions like that.
Okay.
What do you do when blank? The other, challenge here, because not every city manager is going to be coming from an organization that has districts, right? When I worked in Coral Springs, we had, 4 elected officials and a mayor, all elected at large. When you have districts, it does pose, different challenges. So I think those would be good questions to say, how do you manage, or compare and contrast managing in an organization with districts versus one that doesn't. And then again, I'll talk about, I think that whoever we hire needs to be in an organization that has collective bargaining agreements. Because those are just, I mean, I'll say it again. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree.
Great point.
I have just one more question. We all know how expensive it is to live in this city. So let's say we find someone, I'm going to just make this up, from the Midwest where the cost of living or housing isn't the same as here.
Right.
And now they're coming here with a wife and 2 kids. How do we ask someone, you can't really say, can you afford to live here? But can you afford to live here is really the question.
Well, the salary is, I think, commensurate with what somebody would need to live here. I mean, my salary is public. I just said, hey, pay me what you were paying Greg.
Oh.
And I think it's a fair amount for someone to live here.
And no income tax.
True.
And no income tax.
I know, and I know what the salary is.
And we have a great health plan that doesn't charge employees a lot, and it's a good place to work. I mean, there's a good package of
I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell people when they complain about Fort Lauderdale, I go, you live in a country club, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
But I'm just having like younger children.
Yeah.
They'll say, when I see what they have in their savings account, I go, oh my God, I didn't have that amount of money until I was 52.
I
Yeah.
know that.
But they go, it's really not that much money now.
Yeah, and when you're talking about folks that have, school-age children, I think that's one of the things, traditionally what you would hear in Fort Lauderdale, because I lived out west for 30 years. Oh, if you move out east, you're going to have to send your kids to private schools. And I think we're doing stuff right now to change that narrative. With Susan, we're working on, there's great stuff going on in the public schools here in Fort Lauderdale. And, working with Susan, we're working on trying to get the word out. Folks, maybe, hey, education's not our thing, and I get that. But, focusing on, hey, the teachers of the year and recognizing them, recognizing students for achievements, getting the word out. Because I think someone with school-age children, in addition to, worrying about, moving here and the cost of living here is, are the schools good for my kids?
And I agree. I think schools are much. My kids went to public schools.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's a perception, and I think that there's a lot we can do to change that.
I just wanted to let Jerome wanted to weigh in on this question as well.
Yes, one of the questions I like to ask in my interviews is, what have you done to prepare for this interview? Getting from the person what legwork or homework have they done to learn about the position, the organization, the environment within the city, whatever other impacts they are going to have bringing their families to a new area. So I think it's a fair question to ask people, what have you done to study this area, this position, and see what homework they have done and the initiative they've taken on their own. As you know, you can go online and find out pretty much anything you want to about any question you have about this city, the county, the area, the political makeup, the demographic makeup, the school systems, whatever have you, is all available. It's just a matter of, have they taken the initiative to learn?
Okay, that sounds good.
Do you think it's fair to actually ask? That's a great question, but I mean, almost as a follow-up, have you specifically looked at the housing, that question? I mean, I think it's a wonderful question, but I'm just saying, is we just literally asking because I feel it's very important. I think that's what's called having skin in the game. They need to drive over the same pothole that I drive over, and they need to go use the same facilities, and I mean, it's tough, but I find myself, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I need to call that. You know what I mean? If you're using it, then you're dealing with
Yeah.
it. So
And,
it's skin in the game.
And I know you have Dele in a little bit next up, but that's certainly, before candidates get to you, they're calling the recruiter and talking to her. So that's maybe something that she can add to her, list of the screening questions. And I agree with you on the skin in the game, because I drive on Bayview Drive and past Mary's house every day. Twice a day, at least.
People go, you gotta fix that road. And I go, no, don't do it. It keeps people from speeding.
It's getting smoother though, so
It's an interesting take. Yeah. So Bernadette.
Thank you. So a couple of thoughts. I represent governmental entities, specifically municipalities. So our firm has 7 cities. So I've seen the spectrum of managers and really great managers and some managers that are really not so great. And small cities and large cities like Miramar. So one of the things that I've noticed is that managers who have some knowledge of Florida law, or Florida based, have worked in Florida, because Florida's a little bit different, with a lot of different things, right? And so I think that and I'm not saying it has to be someone from Florida, but I would view it just a little bit differently, because those people, as a city attorney, I have to teach them, no, you can't do that, sunshine law, no, this is what ethics laws are, this is what. So I think you're a little bit behind them. Not that people can't catch up very quickly or catch up at some point, but it's just a lot tougher for folks who don't know that are a background in public works are really good. I think you mentioned something like that. Also, people with finance, budget backgrounds are pretty good, because they tend to understand a lot of things that impact various areas of this department. One of the other things I think that we should probably have someone present on is 5-year plan, to the city's plan. And to get some idea about what that plan is, diving down a little bit into that plan to understand whether the manager that will be hired will align well with what the city is envisioning as the plan, because ultimately it really doesn't matter that you're dealing with personalities is what I think as a basic thing we'll be looking for someone who's able to deal with. Even if city commissioners have different thoughts about what they want to do and they're all over the place, it still needs to align with what they voted on as a plan or what may have been voted on even before they got there as a plan. So I think looking at that, and then I was also interested in, you mentioned a work plan, a staff work plan, and I'm wondering whether that work plan aligns with the city's overall plan and what that work plan, I'm not asking for it, but what it may involve. And
we get together with the commission once a year and set priorities, right? So homelessness and affordable housing being one of them. Economic development, public safety, there are priority areas that they set. If you look at any agenda item that we submit to the commission, we show what the alignment is. And this item aligns with, this priority or this. So we have those plans. We can send those to you and talk about them. I think what you're going to see over the next 5 years is certainly City Hall, City Hall and what we do with that. The extra, the stormwater infrastructure. We had kind of a longer term plan, and post-April flood, we accelerated that. So it's, instead of doing 200 million and then 5 years later doing 200 million, we're looking at 700 million over the next 10 years. So stormwater infrastructure, in January, we presented to the commission, when we talk about infrastructure, kind of here's all the infrastructure needs that staff has identified, from sidewalks to roadway resurfacing, to seawalls, to bridges. We presented that, and I think it was about 700 million. And right now we didn't get a lot of feedback in January, and I've said multiple times, hey, we're going to dust that back off in the fall. And ask you to look at it again. If we, could we get folks to support a geo bond for sidewalks or for roadway resurfacing or, for some of those things? Because right now, when we talk about our budget in just general fund capital, what we have allocated in any single year is 20 million. There's $1.5 million for sidewalks a year. $1.5 million for roadway resurfacing. That doesn't go very far. It doesn't go very far at all. So, the need to, put together funding sources that can support some of those things. And then anytime you start talking about, expanding your stormwater program or you're talking about adds to staff as well, because people have to PM, project manage any of those.
And thank you for that. And one last thought is I'd like to see someone who is collaborative, someone who will work with the county, someone who will, because I've seen the city managers as you all have. I've lived in Fort Lauderdale for many, many years, and we've had some who have gotten more because they, for the city, because the relationships are good. With the county and the surrounding municipalities. And so and that should be irrespective of whoever the mayor, the commissioners are, that person should be a collaborative person, someone who really knows and has the values building relationships with people. And I think that will help further, our goals as a city overall. So I really that would be very important to me.
No, that's great feedback, and I'm taking some notes here because when we look at the brochure, the ideal candidate is one of the sections, and so this is going to be very important for that. So thank you, Burnett and Roosevelt.
Mine is very short. You was talking about large cities, and you said anything with a population above 100,000, we consider that.
Yes, they're having issues just like we are. So
I'm when we start looking at what we need, And I look here on page 3 of the city manager's little document here, and I look under fiscal year 2025, and I look at those projects, and I know Mr. Post gonna tell y'all I'm a penny pincher. No, I'm not a penny pincher. I just don't want you charging me more than I got. And you was talking about issuing general obligation bonds. I often ask staff, what is our capacity of borrowing? And every time we borrow, whether we know it or not, it costs all of us money.
Right, oh yeah.
And some of us can afford a little more than others. I'm on that first part. But when I look at, you mentioned by hitting the ground running and whether or not there is some honeymoon time. If you look at the task and the projects on page 3 of that document, and you see stormwater drainage, you got water, wastewater, you got the completion of the parks throughout the city, you got the to finish, if we ever, the police station.
That's getting done by September of 25. September to December of 25. Because we're about to bring the commission a 6-month lease extension at Kaplan. And after that, they have no place to be. So it's getting done.
They may be painting the walls, but
we
they'll
got
be there.
roads
Yeah,
and
they're moving
bridges.
in.
I remember at our first meeting, this was in 2018, when they laid out what they expected of the committee. It is called the infrastructure committee. And when they laid it out, and most of us said, yeah, we can work on that. And then they hit us with a surprise and said, now the only problem you got, you not only have to identify the problem, you got to find the money to fix it. And we are almost there. We're just about $3.5 billion short. So we expect for you to meet that. And I know you talking about going out for bonds, but we have a capacity to where we can't continue to go in debt. They're credit cards, but like any other credit card, sooner or later you're gonna overspend if you don't stop paying. And when we look at portions of this city, if we have to borrow our way out of these projects, we're in deep trouble. So our city manager need to have not only dealing with population, but they must be able to deal with the right now task. There is no honeymoon for whoever come in here. I'm gonna tell you.
Let me clarify when you bring that. Listen, the honeymoon part, maybe that wasn't the right term, but the point is, a new person is gonna come in and he's gonna review and analyze and look. A person that's here is still chasing their tail, just trying to keep up. I guarantee you her phone never, you know what I mean? It is probably constant. But when you come in brand new and you look at the organization and you say, listen, this is not the way I want to run it. I want to run it like this. But when you're here swinging away left and right with 5 people on your back, you don't even have a chance. You're just always trying to catch up. I guarantee that's the way it is. But my point of that is, this guy at least has a moment in time to take a look. This person, to take a look at what's going on here and to assess and to get it. Like Lee Feldman, when he came in here, he did that. He took his time to put it all together the way he wanted it to be, and he ran it. Whereas the last couple times, I agree with you, it is nice to have somebody that already knows. Usually maybe they're the assistant or whatever it is, but you're gonna have time to just look at this and then run it and get in there. I agree there's no time, but you know what I mean? That was my point to that.
Yes,
And just, we have funding sources identified for all of the things that are on this list, so.
and this is only a few of them.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's
There's a bunch of-
more.
yeah.
You know, every project, I mean, we know that there are infrastructure needs, right? And you know, while we can try to get a grant here or a grant there, it's that's piecemeal as opposed to more strategic and comprehensive. So you know, all that costs money. So you know, it's there's lots of options, but and a little free money. I mean, for the stormwater programs, we were able to get 2 different grants that helped us expand the program. But again,
I just
we're always lucky when we get those,
I
right?
understand, and I just want to make sure that whoever come in here realize that I don't know whether we should be considered a growing city or rebuilding the city, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, you're with your focus on the budget and the financials, and both Susan and Laura are our experts in this areas. You know, I guess right now we're about to approve the
Today.
Is it today?
That's right.
501
That's what
is the second
501. Yeah.
Okay, so today's it's going live. That will be something that the candidate, if this search does go out, I guess October 1st, they'll be able to immediately access our fiscal 26 budget.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of your questions and concerns on these big projects are addressed in there. But no, it's very good information. I guess so I really think it's getting your perspective is really great, Susan.
I'm happy. Like I said, happy if
Yeah.
anyone has any questions. Call me. I'll come back if you need me to clarify anything.
I was thinking too, but maybe this won't be an issue, but we have the commission manager form of government. And Mary and I are both on the board of the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Associations. We actually had a educational piece on strong mayor forms of government, our form. And I guess I don't know how prevalent the commissioner manager form is in Florida and the US, or if we're in a minority of governments. But I guess I'm thinking that would the candidate be also someone that would obviously be used to being in the manager form of government, being the strong.
So it's very, very different than a strong mayor. So in Broward, one city has a strong mayor and it's Plantation, which is kind of different. But someone who serves in that, and usually the title is different. It's not city manager, it'll be city administrator is what you will see for someone. And Dele will be able to, when she's doing her screening, she knows the difference on that. But that's someone who basically is more of they're a little bit of a city manager, depending on who the strong mayor is. But again, more of a chief of staff than a city manager. So I'm going at is it end of October? Mid-October. There's a group of the large city executive forum, and it's a group, and we're the smallest of the large cities that get invited to this. So it's a group of city managers that manage large cities. And so, for instance, Cincinnati, Ohio, has a city manager or council manager form of government. Lots of the big California cities have city managers. So it's mixed. It just depends. When you look at a New York or Philadelphia or Boston, strong mayors. But there are cities much larger than us that have managers.
Okay.
In Florida, Tallahassee has a city manager. Gainesville has a city manager. I'm trying to think. Tampa has a strong mayor.
There are just a few in the.
There's just a few in Florida with the strong mayor form. Okay.
For large cities.
For large cities. Okay, no, it's just something. For my understanding, and I think for looking at the candidate pool, just something to remember.
But one of the things when you talk about where to set that bar as far as, hey, we want someone who's been at a city with X, You could say similar city, although then that leaves it up to, what is similar? But if you make it, like I said, 100,000, I mean, everyone will decide what they think. That increases your candidate pool. And the bigger that is, the better, right? I mean, so that doesn't mean you have to hire someone in a city with 101,000 people. But again, it allows for that bigger candidate pool. You're not excluding folks. So that's just
great.
my thought process on that.
that's- yeah. Right.
And just to comment on what you said, I think I may have missed the first part of it, but the same structure of government is very important, I think, because if someone comes in and they've been in a strong mayor form of government, I think it's going to be probably more difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be a
adjust
shock.
to. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's a big shock.
some similar structure of government.
Yeah, similar, yeah.
And full service, like we said.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Full service.
And just to confirm, Susan, your experience so far too has been that 75% of your time is working with
So,
five
you know,
elected? Like-
historically, that's what you hear, and it depends on the time, but no, mine has not.
Okay, interesting.
Mine has not. So, I mean, I pick up the phone whenever anyone calls, and I'm here for them. We do briefings, etc. But I think I've spent, and it just maybe personally, my interests are more in operations.
Yeah.
So I like spending time with the department. So as far as what your skill set is, I don't know that I'm actually that's a good skill set of mine. Kind of that political piece. Like I said, I like operations.
I understand, but in the past it has been
Yeah, that's
About
what I hear
75%,
from
okay.
not just Fort Lauderdale, from other city managers that I've worked with, and just that's what folks talk
that's a
about.
huge amount of time, so you really have to be able to rely on your assistants and your department heads.
Absolutely, and that's why, like I said, just
Because you're occupied with these elected officials
Yeah.
and sometimes educating them.
making good hiring
That's-
decisions.
That's what I found between certain city managers, they had skill sets that were able to manage the five bosses, set expectations, and just kind
Yeah.
of gently manage it.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of times you don't have that experience, you're just taking it all the time.
Yep.
So it's
I agree.
And how it's structured and how the managers manage to deal with elected officials. Briefings, so there are agenda briefings, and it may be every other week. Sometimes it may be every week. And through that process, they'll have their staff there. And you'll brief them on the commission agenda items that are coming up. And so, generally speaking, that's the time that you're meeting with the elected officials. Now, there may be other things that come along during the day, like the mayor's driving by and he sees a pile of trash, and now he's talking about illegal dumping, and what are you gonna do about that? And you have to get your code enforcement person to run over or whatever. But for the most part, that's not really happening. I don't think.
The
Right.
scheduled interaction, certainly. There's both.
There's scheduled interaction. I mean, you find
Yeah.
things that come up, or there may be something that somebody finds out or has a question about. But that's not. You're not spending. Good managers aren't spending the bulk of their time with the city commission. They're just not. So I'm not saying that can't happen, but it's not normal.
Yeah, hopefully that the elected officials respect standing meeting times to consolidate all of their communication so that everyone can respect each other's time. But then again, I'm sure depending on who's elected, you don't know.
I mean, when I first took the seat, I sat down with each and every one of them and just talked about, expectations, schedules, how they work, what is their preferred communication preference. Do you want to hear from me via text? Do you want me to call? Do you want to? And then knowing what to communicate, because things happen here every day. Sometimes I just shoot a text to the district commissioner, depending on what it is. Sometimes I send a text to all of them, just to make sure that when they hear it in the news, it's, they've heard it from us first when things happen.
Sure, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing some of the kind of the day to day.
Just one quick
Yes,
question.
yes.
On average, how many hours a week do you think you spend at this job?
Working. So, you say it's 24/7 and literally, it is 24/7. But I think on average probably 60.
That's what I figured.
60. Yeah. But the folks that are applying know that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I'm just curious.
they know that. But again, once, because some people will respond to text messages in the middle of the night. I think everybody knows I'm a good sleeper. So.
I'm not gonna answer you.
If they want me in the middle of the night, they need to call. They don't text because I have that beep thing shut off. But I have, the phone on for the police chief and the fire chief if they need me in the middle of the night.
And just to confirm, the 10 departments have pretty much been the same for a period of time. Is that?
Yeah, let's see. Sometimes we've moved things out. OMB at some point was an office of the city manager's office. Now it's a standalone department. Let's see, police, parks. Airport used to be a part of TAM. Now it's a standalone department under one of the assistant city managers.
ESD used to be 2 separate departments.
Okay.
So yeah, but in its current form, you feel this is working well. I see, with the additional acting assistants, and then they oversee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I said, this is what has worked for us. I mean, and Anthony and I, when we were both kind of the 2 ACMs, it was hard keeping up with the work. It was hard keeping up with the work with 2. Sometimes you'd go into a meeting without the ability to, prepare. So hopefully now with the 4 and the way we have structured, again, and the assistant city managers, they do more, and that's the one thing I didn't talk about. They have oversight of those departments, but each of them has a portfolio of special projects. So Anthony, is our key on the police headquarters. Chris Cooper is focused, in addition to overseeing DSD, he's our point person on homelessness. Ben is, bridge versus tunnel, and we have him as the point person now on City Hall. Laura, I was kind of the key, the main focus on union negotiations. We're transitioning that to Laura. So in addition to having, departments that they oversee, because we do have good department directors that can manage that, they all have an individual kind of portfolio of work that they're doing from a special projects perspective.
Okay.
So there's plenty of work to go around.
Okay.
And I think we're in a good spot as far as how we have it structured. But whoever we hire, they'll do it the way they see fit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I guess we'll end on that was number 4 on our agenda, and we will.
And I'm going to take off. Nice seeing
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we will move on. I think we actually brought up some of the aspects of what we'll be discussing on this this next section, but we are going to have the presentation with is it Delay?
Delay, yes.
Delay. Oh, sorry, hey Delay. Delay Lohman with GovHR USA, and Delay, you have the floor. We have on our agenda that we are going to review the draft brochure. You're going to talk about the role of the city manager or various roles, and then the proposed list of posting sites.
Sure.
So if you want to go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much. And for the benefit of the committee, I'll introduce myself and provide an overview, and we can delve into the sub items that you have listed here, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. But as I stated, my name is Delay Lohman. I often tell people, if you're familiar with the world famous soccer player Pele or the singer Dwele, that will help you remember how to pronounce my name. I actually joined what was GovHR in 2020. We were recently acquired by MGT, which happens to be headquartered in Tampa. And so we are now part of MGT and go fully by that name, even though those of us who've been with GovHR for a while are still reminding ourselves what the name of our company now is. So I might sometimes slip, but we are now MGT. I started my actual post undergrad career in Broward, in Broward County Administrator's office, being mentored by the county administrator and deputy county administrator during that time. And prior to that, I was at about to say P3, a public-private partnership in the governor's office of Florida for 5 years, which interestingly enough is when I first met Susan Grant when we were working on the Governor Sterling Award. So I've got about 15 years of history in Florida. I happen to be based in Metro Atlanta right now, and spent 6 years of my career as an assistant county and city manager in one of the departments that was in my chain of command for that period of time. Since I've been with GovHR, now MGT, I've conducted more than 30 executive recruitments. More than a third of those have been chief executive roles for city and county and quasi-governmental agencies, ranging from, I think the smallest might have been 11,000 to over 1 million. So that's the experience that I bring to this role. In terms of our roles, I looked at it sort of from various perspectives. Obviously, as the consultant who is working with you all, it's my role to lend the expertise that I bring in the local government industry. During my roles in local government, I was a part of ICMA. I graduated from Leadership ICMA, and so I'm very, very familiar with the council manager form of government, the code of ethics, and all of the expectations surrounding that. And so that expertise will be lent here, also in identifying strong candidates, helping to set expectations for the process, as well as whatever additional expertise that you may need, including what the remainder of the selection process will look like, appropriate ways and times to engage stakeholders and members of the community, and the like. My understanding of the committee is that your role is in part to help ensure transparency of the recruitment process, to publicize and encourage qualified applicants once we start advertising the position, to facilitate community and stakeholder input as appropriate, but also to facilitate an understanding on the part of the community and stakeholders around what the qualifications and expectations are for a city manager, what a selection process entails, what are some of the transparency requirements or ethical requirements that are associated with this type of process. And then finally, to help facilitate equity and an adherence to professional standards as we move through this process. And obviously, the Human Resources Department is the project manager, and I presume we'll be doing the sort of approval of final documents and contract related issues and the like. So in terms of roles, I want to pause there and just see if there's anything I did not touch on that you'd like me to address, or anything that you would like for me to go into further detail about.
Dan.
So can you, this is Dan Limblade, nice to meet you, Dele.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about, and I may have missed it because sometimes I fog out, but the process that you utilize in searching beyond posting of information. How will you be reaching out to potential candidates?
Absolutely. Great question. And so one of the benefits of our firm is that we have, and now I don't know even how many we are at now, but a host of experienced consultants like myself, many of whom are past managers themselves, and we rely on our broad professional networks. We have, of course, having been in business for as long as GovHR has been in business, which I think is about 15 years or so now, a database of applicants that we have worked with and done due diligence on and the like, that we rely on, as well as a huge mailing list of individuals who subscribe to our position announcements. So we use a lot of that in terms of sourcing candidates. I also happen to be a certified diversity recruiter, and so have some very specific skill sets around sourcing candidates who may not typically be highly represented in candidate pools for these positions. So that, hopefully that answers your question, Dan.
Well, let me just, Madam Chair,
Yeah, sure.
get a little more specific. I understand the pool you have and the other colleagues that are in this, but is it your intent that you will be picking up the phone and calling folks?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Roosevelt, you have a question?
Yes, and I apologize, 'cause I normally don't talk in these meetings, just sit around and learn.
You've been talking quite a bit.
Ms. Lowen, I just want to be assured that once we get a list of the candidates, please bring us a list that is large enough so that once we weed out, we should have enough left to make a representation to the city as to what we believe, rather than have to go back out and waste another 2 or 3 months trying to get a new set of candidates. Can you do that for me?
That is always our intent, and I have not had any issues in presenting a strong and varied pool of candidates. In terms of, I alluded to one of my roles being to help set expectations. And so the size of candidate pools may vary, especially as the job market changes. And so I don't like to make guarantees in terms of the overall size of the candidate pool. What we will do is always, and this goes back to the question that Dan raised, is that we will actively seek out and ensure that you all have a number of strong candidates from which to choose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Do we want to move on to the review of the draft brochure?
Sure.
Okay.
And I actually would prefer, if you all are okay with it, to answer your questions on that, if you all have had an opportunity to review it, or let me know if there's a different way you'd like to approach that.
Okay, great. And I did just want to ask our city colleagues, this draft brochure, I believe, went to the commissioners, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago?
It would have been on the meeting agenda of August 20th.
Okay, and was it the same draft we're looking at now that went to the commissioners?
Yes, it is.
It is the same, okay. And did city staff receive feedback from commissioners yet?
I have not received any. I'll ask our assistant city manager if she's heard of any. No.
Okay. If there were to be feedback from the city commission, how would they convey it to you? Do they sometimes just provide handwritten feedback, or was this going to take place at an additional city commission meeting?
So we have agenda briefings, as the city manager was indicating, and so typically they'd share changes there or through an email. Sometimes an assistant would send an email, but yeah, we haven't seen any specific feedback at this point.
Okay. And then just to understand the number of drafts, this draft was created by MCT with the assistance of HR.
Yes, ma'am.
So this was a collaboration.
Yes, we
Yes.
provided a considerable amount of content and we handed it off to Dele. And then she massaged it and came up with the product that you have in front of you now.
Okay, very good. Okay, I just want to understand the origin story of this. So
Chair, if I may.
yes.
So Dele met with staff throughout the organization. I think that was an important part of it as well. So she conducted interviews, for example, all of the ACMs were on a panel with Dele and she asked some key questions about challenges, things happening in order to get to that end product as well. So the input
Okay.
wasn't just HR reviewing it and her reviewing it. She did comprehensive interviews with, I don't know how many groups, I just was part of one of them.
That's good to know.
I think all of the department heads at this point.
Oh, and all the department heads as well. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's great to know. So Earl?
So I guess I'd like to ask the question then, is this for us to kind of bless and move on, or are we able to provide comment and make changes?
We hope for comment, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Alright.
So I guess I'm definitely willing to go through the brochure and take, if anyone has feedback, any of the committee has feedback at this time, I think we should definitely discuss it. But I also want to understand that does this committee have another opportunity to maybe look at a revised draft and provide our individual comments? Like, how can that work, or is this our only opportunity right now to give comment?
With the tentative timeline that we put together, we were hoping to have a final draft today for you to look at.
Okay.
But because Dele has had to use some of the time to meet with staff, some of the other stakeholders had given time for the commission members to provide input. Unfortunately, we do not have a final draft to give you today. That's why we wanted to give you a little opportunity to give input. We may need to schedule another meeting to give you a final draft or to get the final input.
Yeah, I guess that was just in reading through it, I thought it was probably the first draft still that commissioners got, so I guess I am anticipating that this committee will need to meet again to look at a final draft that will incorporate comments from today plus from commission. If you agree, and it sounds like that would have to happen relatively soon given the timeline that you have where you want to start posting the job.
Right, and then we can have that discussion as well about the timeline.
Okay.
Keeping in mind, it is tentative. We can be flexible as we need to, although, we don't want to delay things too much.
Yeah.
And that will have a domino effect in pushing the other deadlines or goals further on the calendar. However, if for the sake of posting the position, we wanted to time it so that candidates knew who was elected and who would be on the commission. We tentatively were going to post the position from the 1st of October to middle of November. I think we can be a little bit more flexible with that, given the date of the election. And I'll let Dele give some input on that as well.
Okay.
And that would still not really impact the later events on the calendar to a great degree, in my opinion.
Okay, very good. So committee, with that being said though, I think definitely we've had this first draft and if you I'm open to people sharing their comments and thoughts with Dele and as well as HR.
Okay, I have a concern that on the first part of it, the city section, I think this is our out of the box opportunity to really shine, and I don't think it shines enough, especially as it relates to thriving business community. I think there needs to be some comment in there about what types of businesses are here. We have this menagerie of Fortune 500 down to sole proprietorships, and what the city's role is in that. So I would like to see something like that. The only other comment that I have, and Delay, you may have some input, or staff or committee. There really isn't anything there on cost of living that I could see. It may be in there. I just read it for the first time. Well, that's not cost of living.
That's a demographic.
It's demographic.
Yeah.
So I think, in light of what we talked about earlier and it being expensive to live here, there's no income tax. I think that's, and most people might not know that, but many people do. So that kind of stuff, I think is important. And then the last thing that, for me, at least at this point, there is a bullet on the last page, and they're not numbered, so it's my last page that says ideal candidate. The second to last bullet says proven ability to work with labor unions. I think we need to amplify that a little more and just say contract negotiations. Successful contract negotiation is such a big part of this job, is that contract ability, negotiation ability. One last comment under compensation and benefits, and I can go either way, but is it typical, Delay, for you to not put a range in there, or is that
We prefer to put a range in there. We discussed that, and it's not uncommon for city manager positions to be what we often refer to as set rate, where there's not a set range, but the rate is set by the body that appoints them. And I gave an example to Jerome when we spoke of a recent South Florida recruitment we did, where we simply noted that salary negotiations would start at or around a certain range.
I mean, they can
So
find
that
it
it
out.
didn't box you in.
What Susan's making, it's public information, but just in a brochure, it's been my experience that having something a little more definitive is attractive.
I would agree.
Yes.
Can we add that? Can we add the
Yes.
salary range?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you for your comments. Yeah.
We don't have a salary range, so we couldn't add a range, but we could, as Dele mentioned, indicate that the last city manager made around, or it would be around X amount, because we do have adopted pay ranges, but the city manager is not one of the positions that have an adopted range.
Bernadette, and then Roosevelt.
So I'd like to see more about the diversity of this area. I mean, this is, Broward County in particular is more diverse, like one of the most in the nation in terms of its makeup. And so Fort Lauderdale being the seat, I think needs to reflect that. And when I'm reading the second paragraph, I'm not getting that from reading that or the third paragraph. And I'd also like to just comment on what Ann said as well. Something about the business community. I mean, certainly I like that we start with the beach in the third paragraph. Yeah, vibrant life for residents, visitors, including a host of arts, culture, and recreation. But I think we should talk about the how attractive it is for businesses to thrive here as well. It's a great place to live, and it's great for residents and visitors, but it's also a great environment for business. And to have some beefing up to add that in. And then well, those are the biggest things. I'd like to see more diversity and beefed up business language.
Okay, fantastic. Roosevelt.
Bernadette took most of mine, that was good. But the acting city manager was talking about anything above 100,000, and I know here we got 150,000. So what do we gonna use as a name on? That's on the last page.
It's on the last
On the
page
top,
for
yeah.
ideal
First,
candidate, right. In a jurisdiction, the first bullet point says 15 years management level experience, and it goes on, but finishes with in a jurisdiction with a population over 150,000.
Yeah,
Should that be 100,000?
so, yeah, we.
Yeah, I guess Dele, that was one thing that I don't know if you were on with us when Susan. Okay, great. You know, she was previous experience with 100,000 population city. I guess what are your thoughts on that versus 150,000?
I typically will just say generally cities of comparable size and complexity, and that usually covers it. When we look at sort of a first review of the applicant pool, we will always look at the populations of the communities that those applicants have worked in throughout their career, and make a judgment in terms of whether they've had experience with cities of comparable scale too. So we look not just at population, but at functions, budget, and the like, because those can vary. They're not all directly proportional all the time. So I'm fine with making it 100,000 as a starting point. I think that's perfectly fine if you want to make that edit.
Committee, how do we feel about that? Lowering that down to 100, or I guess I would agree with you that I'm also more concerned with the fact that we have a $1.2 billion budget that the city manager is going to have to manage, and we want someone who would be familiar with that size, and we have 3,000 city employees. And so I think those are key indicators that we want to be following. Population size, I guess, I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I guess that, thoughts, Jerome, from HR perspective?
I'm just thinking that the population size is generally indicative of the budget size, et cetera, and is 100,000 going to be indicative of the size of the function and the budget as you mentioned?
Right. Maybe too small.
I don't know.
I guess I'm leaning towards 150,000.
Me too.
So,
Me too.
as you know.
One more piece to consider, and I think this speaks to Earl's point earlier about us being a resort community. Our population doubles during the day.
Right.
So it's a little different than a suburban community that is a similar population. So I liked Dele's idea personally of the cities of comparable size and complexity. That might be a broader term because of Earl's point, yeah.
Perhaps using the language that you suggested though about focusing more on the function and the budget size as opposed to the population size.
But Madam Chair, I think delay from my perspective, and I'm just one person, but if you find a diamond in the rough that's at 100,000 population or wherever, and you think this person is an A player and we need to talk to them, bring them forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't hold them back.
And Earl.
Okay, so what I'd like to, when I read this, I agree with you, Dan, I'm not seeing this shiny, polished representation. What I don't see, I'll start back here. In my mind, the city, and I think the last city manager also told me, I think there's 4 individual features of our city. And that is, one is we have residential neighborhoods. We have a unique need. That's a unique situation that most cities actually have it. But then we have the yachting capital. I don't see the Venice of America here. That's a big economic driver. Right. That's something that you need to help facilitate that's on here. The Venice of America, the yachting capital, right? That's 2. 3, we have a beach community and resort. That's a unique situation that a lot of cities may have right on the beach, but they don't have that big community. So you have to be able to facilitate both of those happening with unique needs. So that's 3. Then 4, then to your point, we have a downtown community. We actually have something that's vibrant and that's coming up, live to work and play. So
Rapidly growing.
in my mind, this city needs to represent those 4 unique aspects that this person should be excited about coming in to working on a beach community, he has a downtown, he's got a yachting community. You know, I think those four items should be listed in here. And just kind of weaved in. I think the data's there, but those distinct items should be, I think, in
No excitement.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I would agree, go ahead.
Sorry, one last
Yeah.
thing. There's a whole cruise industry here as well. It's
You
very
got a port.
unique. You have a port with the cruise industry, you know, it's plus the port, plus the cruise. So if we could put bullet points on there that really jump out that this person is coming into some place that's very, very unique. Maybe Miami is very similar, but other than that, there's not too many cities in Florida that have all those dynamics happening on vacation.
A world-class convention center with a brand new convention center hotel with 800 keys. I mean, that stuff just screeches out at you.
Yeah. Hotels. So
Yeah, and one other thing I wanna mention, I think this is a good place, the ideal candidate, the question or the concerns that I had about collaboration. Someone who understands the value of teamwork and community engagement with other government entities, neighborhoods and communities.
okay, yeah.
Business, yeah.
That's a fantastic point. And I think that's exactly where it goes. So and Roosevelt.
Yeah, I'm good. I wasn't finished.
Okay.
The other thing, when you talking about salary ranges, I don't think we should put a range. You got someone, as someone mentioned earlier, that live Midwest, be willing to take on the job. They got all the other qualifications, but they're just not used to making the kind of money that the city manager here makes. And I think if you say that in the last city manager made this, well, don't try to pay me less. So I think you may want to put a cap on it, but not a minimum. Most everybody never go for the cap, but that's okay.
I do agree with this point about trying to show what the last city manager made. I don't think we should do that. I think if we don't have a range that it's typically it's what's commensurate with experience and some I know you hate that,
Well,
but
I think you gotta at least have a starting salary negotiable from a certain amount.
the thing is they're gonna need that salary to live here. So
Yeah.
but I don't know how to any suggestions.
I
If you
think,
don't have a range, we can't give a range because there is a range of what the last group made.
Well, but there's not an adopted range by the way.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think.
So like for any other position, you could say the range is this to this and it would be commensurate with experience, but there is no range as the city commission approves the salary.
What does MGT recommend? What have you seen on other cities in the same situation? What did they put down there?
The most recent language that we've used is that salary negotiations will start at or about X amount and are dependent upon qualifications or negotiable dependent upon qualifications.
I think that's smart because if you give
Yeah,
a range
good.
that's like 100,000 to 200,000, I wanna get that 200,000.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that language.
I
If we
think
can
that
get
language is good.
something out of the city. Good.
I think that is that something that
Yeah, so if we were to do that, Dele, maybe what we do is we take, so we have a deputy range, a deputy city manager range, and we just go with the high end of that for at or above, cause you'd have to make higher than a deputy.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
You know, at or above, at or around.
So if we can modify by that, and I think, these have been great comments from the committee. I'm not gonna add very much because I had some of the same, where we can, some of the same themes. I think it just kind of jazz it a little bit so that it kind of sparks. We wanna be a smart city. We wanna highlight technology and innovation that is in Fort Lauderdale that we're using, anything that also we're using in government. I think those are key things that bright candidates want to be involved with, that we should highlight where possible. I really agree with Earl's point about highlighting. I actually had specific wording about the 63 recognized neighborhood associations that build community and are key factor in pretty much bringing the residents, public servants, and elected officials together. I think it's definitely an aspect of this community. I like the hyperlinks. I think there could be a few more. I don't know if this like how the official document is going to look. I like making sure we have our motto on here. We are FTL. We are FTL. I think in the challenges, projects, and our key issues, once we kind of finalize the wording, I think that one thing that would be nice for the candidates, for example, the first one, stormwater drainage capital improvement program, it's known as Fortify Lauderdale. We could add that wording that it's known as Fortify Lauderdale. We actually have a website for it, so it's something that they can quickly click on and see. So kind of those things to show them that the substance of what these things mean. I mean, not hyperlinks everywhere, but just I think where it makes sense, be a little more specific. Same thing as far as addressing the new state law about homelessness. Let's actually put the Florida state law like HB 1365. And then I'll probably provide some suggested wording on the commuter and freight rail line passing through downtown changes. I think I have a little bit more specific wording I would suggest that I'll pass on. I think that everything else, all the comments have been great. I think we're kind of in the same theme of that we want to just make sure that we brighten it a bit and that it's very reflective of the business community, Venice of America. I mean, biggest boat show in the world, cruise industry, just all of those aspects I think would be great. So are there any other proposed comments on the brochure? Because we do need to move ahead. The meetings, we're at 11:40 right now.
There's one that I have that when I was on strategic planning, I don't remember what year it was, but we came up with a theme, and I don't even know if the city still uses it, we're the place you never want to leave.
Yes.
The city you never wanna leave.
Yeah, so I think that needs to be in there.
It's in there.
It is?
Yeah, it's on
Missed it.
it's on page 3 for vision.
Was there any graphics that goes along with this?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there will be graphics. Okay, yeah. So this
Yeah.
is just
This is just the text.
script. Okay.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So having said that, can we just quickly go over the list of posting sites?
Yes. Pull that up. So you'll see a short list there that is likely familiar to you all. And after years of doing this, we've actually started to really narrow down the sites where we post our job announcements, because we've just done research on where most of our candidates come from. And for a manager position, it will overwhelmingly be ICMA, the state, CMA association, if there is one in that state, as well as LinkedIn. That is overwhelmingly where our applicants come from, who do not come directly from our own database or professional networks. And so we've really honed in on that, and that's why it is a relatively short list.
But these are only paid sites that we would engage. You have others, i.e. you said you have a newsletter that you would put out?
Correct.
Et cetera. So can you tell us about those?
Correct. And I wish that I had I don't even have the number in my head. It's constantly growing, but it's thousands on our mailing list who regularly subscribe to our updates where we post our open jobs. And of course, people seek us out for that because they want to know what those high quality job opportunities are, as well as access to a database that we pay for with city and county manager contact information that we can stratify based on population size throughout the country. And then our collective LinkedIn network. So not just posting on LinkedIn Jobs, but collectively we've got, I think I've got more than 1,000 alone. So when you add all of us together, we share that responsibility of promoting all of.
Any comments or questions? Okay. So just yes.
Just one. So I consider delay a messenger of opportunity and a liberator of talent. And so I think that, posting on these job sites is really fine and well. Usually what I've found is people who are going to the websites and looking for jobs are running away from something. I want her to be looking for somebody who's currently working, generally happy, not looking for another opportunity, but she just brings this and jazzes them so much that they get attracted to it. So I just wanted to make sure I let you know from my, and just me, that's my perspective, not the committee's, but that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
And yes, that is what we do. We do not solicit, I will note, we do not solicit organizations where we just did a recruitment. So that would break faith with our clients. But other than that, yes, we do.
So that sounds like, and I don't know this for any particular reason, or I'm not suggesting this, but for example, if the city manager of Tampa wouldn't have any conflict as a previous hire from you and is just fantastic and really ticks all the boxes, you would be reaching out to that person.
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that's what you're saying is like there's a lot of talent that are not actually seeking work, but that would be maybe a great fit. And that would be something that you would do is identify those city managers. And like Bernadette said, they may very well be in Florida. And you will be reaching out to them.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that kind of stimulated a thought in my mind. What's the totality of the do not call list for you?
I don't know that I could give you a number on that. What I can say is that that's never been an issue.
I can understand that because you're going to have to place somebody or you don't get paid. But what I'm trying to say is I'd like, since you're now with a bigger firm, I'm assuming that MGT is a bigger firm?
They are.
Yeah, so how many recruiters are in the firm?
It's the same number. They acquired us because they didn't have executive recruitment in their portfolio, so they didn't have any others that were already there.
Yeah, so and how far back do you go before you can call them? How many years?
About 2 years because of especially for managers, because for we're not going to solicit anybody who's been in their position for less than 2 years because of the ICMA Code of Ethics.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to put on the record, the firm is a reputable firm. It's one that's known, well, at least the prior firm, it's one that's known for doing this type of work for municipal government in that space. So I think we're going to probably most likely get good candidates from.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Dayle. That was very great information. So glad that you're involved in this process with the city and with us. One thing I just wanted to finalize on expectations on deadlines for this document. Jerome, has city commissioners been given a deadline as to when they are going to provide comment?
We did provide them with the timeline as well, and we told them that we wanted them as soon as possible in order to keep with that timeline.
Okay.
So in a sense, yes.
Okay.
But no definitive date on calendar. So.
Because I think I do think it's very important if the committee agrees and if you don't mind, I would like us to meet again to make comment on the very final draft. I mean, there's been good input today from all of you, and I just do feel that, it's such an important aspect of what goes out to these potential candidates. I'm just wondering if we can schedule a meeting to do that.
Do we have other business as well that
We could I think there could be other business. I know we're running short on time too, and Ashley's here. And we can see what everyone's schedule is. But we were going to talk on the agenda about Ashley, you were going to talk about the strategic communication, the website and the draft public survey. Which I think is very important. But I don't know, given the timing, if we are going to have a second draft, when would that be, would you estimate?
Well, I would ask Dele how soon we could have MGT put something together following all of the interviews with the stakeholders and confirming that there is or is not any input from the commissioners. And then gathering what you have heard today. I guess one of the questions I have is, do you want the members of the committee to send us something, we can compile it and send it to you in terms of their input, or did you gather it all today sufficiently that you know what they're looking for the next revision?
So I'll take the last one first, and yes, I was taking copious notes. I know that, Madam Chair, you were going to send some language around the commuter rail specifically, but I gathered a good bit of the other language that was offered in my notes, and I'm happy to rewatch the recording if I feel there's anything that was missed. Right now, in terms of commissioners, I reached out twice to all of the commissioners. I've thus far met with the mayor. I have one commissioner that I'll be meeting with this afternoon, and the vice mayor had to bump.
Uh-oh, you froze up.
You got bumped.
Andre.
While we're waiting for her to come back in,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, since we're gonna have another meeting, if we can roll and sorry, Ashley, so that we can give her the appropriate time. And
Yeah, that's where I was going with this. I hope you don't mind, but when did you want to go live with the website?
That's up to you. I mean, we've got the survey, I think, ready to go. The website is ready. We wanted to show it to you to see if you wanted to make any changes, any additional things, and then I could talk you through like what the options are as far as the way that it looks and what we could include on it. And then just go through this larger communications plan.
Is she back?
Oh yeah, no, she's back.
So we can do that at your next meeting.
So, Daylight, sorry, we did a little segue about our agenda real quick. We'll come back to you. So committee, I do think that we were trying to keep these meetings to 2 hours. It's my first advisory board, so I don't know what the protocol is, but given the fact that I am strongly suggesting we have another meeting on the brochure, I'm thinking that meeting would take place in the next two weeks. I guess Dele, do you think we would have a revised brochure
By the 24th? Well, that's not too long.
So if we're keeping with Thursdays by September 26th, Thursday, September 26th.
That is the day that the vice mayor had to bump our meeting to. So I will not have, I think I'm breaking up again.
No, you're good.
We can hear you at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can't.
Now we can't hear you.
Well, we can't hear you now.
I also wanted to,
Can't hear you, Dele.
from listening to your conversation, I was getting the impression that some of what you wanted with the brochure was to kind of spice up the language a little bit. And I'm sure Dele is entirely capable of doing that, but I wanted to offer our services if that was needed too. So if that's something that you guys want to send
I think that's a great idea.
Haley, can you hear us now?
Maybe
I can, it's just breaking up.
We can hear you now again too.
Okay.
So I think what about by Thursday, October 3rd? Would that be
Yes.
we meet at 10 a.m. on Thursday, October 3? Roosevelt.
Yeah, before we
Yes.
vote on that, let me ask staff, when I think that if we are making changes, it need to go back to the commissioners, right?
Not necessarily.
How would they?
No, we would provide them with a copy of the final draft as keeping them in the loop. But once they have given all of their input to Dele, that is sufficient communication that we have. I don't think we need to go in front of the commission a second time with that.
I'm good.
Okay, so Dan has thank you, pointed out that Thursday, October 3rd is Rosh Hashanah. I do like to avoid us doing it on those holidays. So any chance, I know this would not be a Thursday, but what about Monday the 30th, September 30th? Would that,
I don't have a calendar with me right now.
okay,
Is there any way we can have staff send out 2 days, like September 30th,
maybe a
and
couple
another
days,
one?
because I know we're going off our we had some
Doodle
preset
poll.
meetings.
I'll be out of town on the 3rd.
It's okay. Well, committee, essentially I think we'd like to meet probably it's going to be the first week of October, or sometime between September 30 to, let's just say, October 8 or 9. And staff will work with us to find a date that will work, that won't hit a holiday, that will work for the committee, and that also would be in line with your completion of the second draft, Dele.
Yes.
And so let's shoot for that, and if you don't mind then, Ashley, we will do your presentation at that meeting. Sure. And if there's anything you want to share with us in advance of your presentation, like the actual, if you have the website or the questions that you want to share in advance, then we can actually review them beforehand.
Sure.
That might
Sure.
just be.
And you should have a copy of the larger
Of the-
communications
yes.
plan, and this basically encompasses all of the avenues that we're able to use. And if you have any feedback from that, I'll be happy to take it at that time.
Okay.
Could I just ask that we please not have the meeting on September 30th because I'll be flying at that time home. So.
Okay, we will not do it on September 30th.
Thank you. I don't want to miss anything.
And this is a additional meeting or a substitute meeting?
This is going to be an additional meeting that wasn't on our original meeting plan.
So will we have then that?
We will still continue to have the other meetings as calendar.
Okay.
Yeah. And Dele and colleagues, what since, and I would encourage the committee, if you have the same desire like I do, to actually provide suggested wording, which can be accepted or rejected, obviously. Should we email that to Jerome?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll collect anything that you wanna send and funnel it to Dele.
Okay, so just I plan to just, I like to write things and make specific suggestions. They can be accepted or rejected, but if you want to do the same, please give your specific comments to Jerome. So great.
Okay.
All right, so moving on, we are deferring I guess, do I need a motion to defer item 6 to? Okay, so can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
And all in favor of deferring the presentation by Strategic Communications to the next meeting, please indicate raising your hand saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, very quickly want to acknowledge that we've got some members from the public. Bill, did you want to say anything?
In the interest of your time, I'll be very quick. I want to first of all, again, thank you for all of your input in serving on this. This is a very valuable committee. Bill Brown, resident of the Central Beach area. Everything you discussed, from the infrastructure problems that this community is facing, from a financial perspective as well, labor negotiation contracts. I sit as a member of the Budget Advisory Board. We've been presented from Public Works. There's $900 million worth of infrastructure projects that need to be accomplished. On the labor union negotiations, fire and police went 3 years without a contract, and the next city manager is coming in, has to probably start negotiations because those contracts end at the end of 2026.
so just over 2 years. But I sit here and we talk and listen, and yes, we have some challenges as a community, but I think when you sit here and you listen and you think about these challenges, we also need to have the community would serve in the best interest of the next city manager to look at those challenges as opportunities. And that's what we have to look at and bring forward in order to keep this city growing, because we have 8 general obligation bonds that we're maybe going to be faced with, no increase in ad valorem for 18 years. There might have to be some raises in taxes because assessed values might not continue to grow. So, but those are all challenges that can become opportunities. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks for that perspective, Bill. All right, any other items from anyone present for the good of the order? Okay, and I can't remember if I need a motion. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Do I need a motion?
You can adjourn it yourself.
Or I can adjourn. This meeting is adjourned at 12:01.
And Bernadette needs a parking pass.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam
That was
Chair.
great input.